Welcome back to the Range Minded podcast, where we talk all things Second Amendment, whether it be just the guns and gear, all the cool stuff, things that you can hold. Maybe we're going to talk about what's going on with the culture in the gun community, or maybe we'll even dive into Washington and what is going on with those people up there and how they're dealing with your rights. I love the Second Amendment and I love to share that passion with you. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about a few different things in this episode. First of all, I wanted to revisit some stuff that we talked about a couple episodes ago, and that is referring to the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. I want to just talk about where they're at, what's going on with them. Maybe we'll talk about what they are a little bit deeper. And then I want to talk about something that does kind of concern me, and that's what's going on with the ATF and the DEA. So please stay tuned as we talk about these things and have this conversation, because I think they're important and I think you're going to enjoy it. So stay tuned. Before we dive into this episode too deeply, I just want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you to you guys out there listening, whether you are hanging out in your car in traffic, or maybe you clean your guns or whatever while listening to the show. It's awesome. I appreciate it. I know your time is valuable and it means a lot to me. But that being said, do me a favor. While you're just hanging out and listening to the show, why not drop a comment or share it with a buddy or whatever, right? Do all the YouTube and things, right? Like, share, comment, all that crap. That would be fantastic. It helps me out a bunch, and it actually leads me to my goal of 1,000. Oh man, my voice! 1,000 subscribers in the year 2025. So hopefully you can help me hit that goal. Also, if you spend any time on X like I do, way too much, you can always find me there almost any time of day on X at Range Minded. That's where you can find me. Anyways, let's jump into the show. Let's get this thing started and hang on to your butts, because you might get a little frustrated with this one. I know we've talked about this before, but be patient. Be patient with me, because this is important information. Let's talk about the Hearing Protection Act, or HPA. I'll use either one of those names for this bill interchangeably. They're the same thing, obviously. Now, the Hearing Protection Act, the HPA, has been around for quite a while. Now, it made a comeback here in 2025 when Trump made one office, right? He made promises to us firearms owners that heavily voted for Trump this go around. And he, like I said, he made a promise that he would protect the Second Amendment and he would move towards a freer society, an easier way for us to exercise that right. With that, Representative Klein and also Crapo, Mike Crapo from my state, Senator Crapo, they introduced this Hearing Protection Act in both the Senate and the House, which is fantastic. Now, on the House side, it made its way into the big, beautiful bill, right, that we hear too much about. Well, as it was introduced, let's put it this way, as it was introduced into the House, the Reconciliation and Ways and Means, right, they got a hold of this and they threw this out. But with your help and other firearms owners' help and a lot of pressure being put in, it was put back in this big blue bill, blue bills, anyways, this big, beautiful bill in its fullness, right? And it passed the House very, very narrowly. I'm saying it's 215 votes to 214 votes. Very decisively, not even decisively, that's not the right word. It was a very close margin, obviously. So we need to understand that that's a big deal. Nonetheless, it did pass the House, and now it's being passed on to the Senate to do whatever they're going to do. It hasn't got as much positive attention in the Senate as it did in the House. So it's important for us as gun owners to keep that pressure on in the Senate. So if you know who your senator is, comment on their social media profiles. You get a hold of them in Washington. You call the switchboard and ask for your senator. It's actually quite easy. I've done it before. You call, you tell them what state you live in, And then the kind lady or gentleman there on the switchboard will direct you to wherever you need to go to talk to your representation. It is easy to do, and it's important to do. Also, I think we mentioned this last time we brought this up. It's important to be kind and courteous to those people. They're just staffers. You're not talking to your representation. You're talking to their staffers. Be kind, but be stern and let them know what you want. The Hearing Protection Act, if you don't know what it is for sure, maybe if this is the first time you've heard about it, what the HPA aims to do is to remove suppressors from the NFA. The NFA was created in 1934. It was a giant catch-all. It was designed to curb mob violence at the time. I think it was probably a little bit more than that. I think it was another way for them to maybe get folks on tax evasion as well, because it is a tax. The NFA is a tax. Anyway, the HPA is designed to remove suppressors from under the control of the NFA, meaning you could just go to your local gun shop, you could fill out the paperwork necessary, and once you get a clear on your background check, you can take the suppressor home. As it sits currently, the way purchasing a suppressor works, if you're unaware, it is pretty burdensome. You need to fill out what's called a Form 4. You fill out this Form 4. You have to be exact and precise in how it's filled out. It has to be perfectly filled out. You need to get passport photos, not from your passport. You're not going to peel the passport picture out of the. You're not going to take that out. You're going to get new photos that are passport size. You also have to send fingerprints, and then you pay $200 as a fee, a tax, for the privilege of having a suppressor. Now, this is every time you purchase a suppressor. This isn't a one-time deal. Every time you buy a can, you have to fill out the exact same process, almost like they have no clue who you are. Photos, fingerprints, Form 4, fee, and weight. And the weight has been so sporadic over the years. Like, I remember when I first really got into the industry, as far as retail side, we're talking 9 months or so to get your approval for your suppressor and your tax stamp to come back. I have heard it as far as 16 or 18 months. It was something like that for the length of time. Recently, we've seen some of these wait times to come down drastically, and it's been a couple of days. But the Hearing Protection Act is definitely going to change that wait time. We're going to get into that a little bit later. The big question with the Hearing Protection Act is why? Why does it matter? Why do we need to worry about a bill to take the suppressors out of the control of the NFA? The biggest reason is your hearing. It is a health reason. In fact, we saw the ATF themselves reach out to Congress to request suppressors for the health and safety of their agents when training in an indoor range with, because guns are loud. Now, there's a drastic misconception, and I know many of you understand this, that suppressors don't make things absolutely quiet. It is not a silencer. It is a suppressor. Now, I know some of you autistic gun nerds out there are going to be like, well, it says in the patent silencer. I get it. But that's not what it does. It doesn't just make a gun magically silent. Hollywood has screwed the idea or the conception of how a suppressor works for years. That's not how it works. Now, firearms, they're going to be, at 140 decibels, 135 decibels. Some of them are extraordinarily loud. What a suppressor does or aims to do, a good quality suppressor will bring those down to, I wouldn't say hearing safe, but dropping it down to 120, maybe 110 decibels, which is a drastic difference. I know it doesn't sound like much, but for you nerds out there, you think your PEL, permissible exposure limits, that I know what I'm talking about here. Those, if you're exposed too much for too long, you're going to lose your hearing and you don't get it back. It's not something that grows back. If you've ever shot without hearing protection, you know what I mean when I talk about the ringing in your ears. Imagine doing that more often. Yes, I know, you buy hearing protection. I recommend hearing protection every time you shoot, even with suppressors, by the way. But at least it brings it down to a level that's far less than 140 or 150 or 180 decibels, which you're probably not really going to get that high. Nonetheless, it's for your health and safety. And that's what I appreciate about Representative Klein and also Senator Crapo, that they're willing to introduce this as an effective means to protect shooters, whether they be hunting or at sport or even in self-defense issues. It's a way to keep their hearing, a little bit better in line. It's not rocket surgery, but I guess it is fluid dynamics and that kind of stuff. Nerdy stuff. Nonetheless, suppressors are cool. They should not be in the NFA. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it made it through the House and now it's sitting in the Senate. That's where the Hearing Protection Act is right now, is sitting with the Senate. The problem is with the Senate is it hasn't really garnered as much favor or attention as it did for the House. Representative Klein is still pushing it as much as he can. Again, that's where we come in as citizens. We need to be talking to these people that are representing us in Washington and say, hey, I want this included in its entirety and I want you to pass it. That's what needs to happen. That's the only way it's going to happen, is if they see that their constituents want this to be there. Otherwise, they'll just vote the way they want to vote, or those that have a really loud voice but are a small minority, like Moms Demand Action or some of these other groups, they're going to catch the ear of these senators because they're the loudest, squeakiest wheel. More like screechiest wheel, I suppose. So we have to be active and participating in this whole system in order for it to work correctly. So get on the horn and let your senators know that you want this bill passed. You want this included in this big, beautiful bill. We want the Hearing Protection Act to take place in its entirety. The next thing I want to talk about, which we didn't touch too much on when we talked about this a couple episodes ago, was the SHORT Act, the Stop Harassing Rifle Owners Today. I had to look at my notes because it's a ridiculous name. I get it. Nonetheless, stupid name, good bill. Let's put it that way. So what the SHORT Act aims to do is we talked about suppressors being removed from the NFA, but let's go one step further. Let's take short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and any other weapons that are in a shorter configuration out of the NFA as well. Why not? Now, this would include modern sporting rifles that have a barrel length shorter than 16 inches, that aren't pinned or welded, if you know what that means. We can talk about that at another time if you like. Shotguns that are less than 18 inches in barrel length. And again, some of these any other weapons that are smaller. Now, these, you might think that this is just like a novelty item, but I want you to look at AR pistols, by the way, because the last administration was really pushing your AR pistol to be put in as an SBR. This would help mitigate and remove that potential issue down the line by saying, no, doesn't matter the length of the rifle. The barrel doesn't make it more accurate or more dangerous or more concealable. That is an asinine argument. Let's just remove these from the NFA and make them available the same way that the HPA works. Makes them available at your local dealer. You fill out and pass your background check, and then the firearm gets transferred to you. No other red tape, no other BS. Now, the way it sits now is much like suppressors. You fill out a form, you pay your tax fee, fingerprints, photographs, all this other crap. You send it and you wait and you wait and you wait. It could be a few days. It could be a few months. It just depends on whether, like, where you sit in the stack of background checks or how they're feeling that day back at the FBI background check system. It really is anybody's guess. By the way, side note, guess what they're using to do the background check on you that you just paid $200 for? The same system that you use when you buy a firearm at your dealer. It's no different. other than you're just paying for them to make you wait for something that you should be able to purchase anywhere. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's what we have right now. That's what we're dealing with. Now, back to the Short Act. I don't want to just hit this and go. I want to talk about this a little bit more. It's important for us to push the Senate side on this. Now, the Senate has to take control of this. This is going to go through the reconciliation bill, and it's the only way to get the Short Act to take effect is through this reconciliation bill. Again, just like the HPA, we have to be contacting our senators and telling them what we want. We have to. That's what constituents are supposed to do. The Constitution, the preamble of the Constitution, right? We the people. It is up to us to tell our representation what we want, or they're just going to do whatever they feel, whatever the special interest is pushing them to do, whatever the screeching moms are telling them to do. If that's the only things they're hearing, they're going to think, well, that's really, I guess, what we have to do. Don't be apathetic and don't be lazy. Get on the phone, get on their social medias, write them a letter, something. But you can't just sit on this and wait. Like, this is actually getting to the point of urgency. You have to do this week. Get on the phone this week. Multiple times, whenever you're on X, you find your senator, you message them, you tag them in posts nonstop, every day as much as possible. Let them know how you feel. And if you want this to be passed, if you want the Short Act to remove these items out of the NFA and make them available to you at just a local gun store, you have to be proactive now. No more waiting. The time is now to make it happen. The reason why I express the urgency for now is it is not doing well. It is not really being receptive, or our representation are not receptive to the Short Act. That's why it's so urgent. Now, Representative Klein is doing his best to get it put in there, to keep it going, to keep the conversation happening, but it's not being received as well as it should be. Now, we can't discount the fact that the NRA and gun owners of America and some of these other groups are actively fighting. They're actively fighting for your rights. Like, they're trying to do the best that they can. And this costs money, by the way. This isn't free for them to speak for us. So maybe consider donating. It's also really nice to see the NRA doing NRA things that they haven't done for the last 25 years. It's nice to see them proactive again. And I commend you, by the way, NRA, if any of you guys are watching this, thank you for doing the right thing again. It's about time. Maybe it's time for me to start making donations again. I still haven't made that leap yet. It might be time. I don't know. That's neither here nor there. We need to recognize that both the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act are trimming, I don't want to say it that way, they're reducing government overreach. They're allowing us as law-abiding firearms owners, as legal citizens who vote, it is allowing us to exercise our Second Amendment rights the way that we want and the way I believe the founders intended it to be. The right of the people, to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. To me, that's fairly clear. The people, not a militia, the people, their rights shall not be infringed. So turn up the heat and don't stop until this bill passes the Senate. That's the only place the Short Act will have any traction, is through the Senate. So I can't encourage this strongly enough. It's a big deal. Okay, so we talked about the Hearing Protection Act, and we've talked about the Short Act. I wrote some things down. I was wondering and brainstorming a little bit, what are the pros and what are the cons if these things happen, right? Let's just go to our happy place and say, okay, these pass the House, these pass the Senate, and now the president is going to sign them into law. Let's hope this happens. But what are the pros and cons? What are the things that we can look forward to, and maybe the things that we should watch out for? The first one I came up with was access to suppressors. Right. Let's just go with the Hearing Protection Act first. The ease of access to suppressors, obviously, it's going to be much more available to a wide variety of firearms owners, right? We're not going to have to go through the burdensome thing. We talked about how crazy it is to get a can. Now you can just go to your dealer. You I almost said you pay the fee. You don't pay the fee. You buy the suppressor. You fill out your background check, and once you pass it, you take that home. The ease of getting these health and safety devices into people's homes, into their range bags, is going to be much, much better. That's the first one I came up with. Really, this next one probably should have been number one, let's be honest, is the health benefits, right? We talked about how it drastically reduces those decibel levels to maybe not be hearing safe, but to the level of you don't need to put earplugs in and earmuffs on because of how loud that firearm gets. This just muffles the sound. Really, a suppressor is just a muffler. So the benefits to your hearing and your ability to shoot longer and more enjoyable, it also kind of reduces recoil. In some cases, it's going to be a better experience and a healthier experience for shooters all around. The next one on my list, number 3, was cost savings. No longer do we have to pay that $200 fee. Now we just buy the suppressor at whatever the retail price is. There's a definite benefit there. Not only that, the savings in that $200 up front, but maybe there's some savings in traveling back and forth to the range or the retail spot where you're buying your suppressor. So there's time savings, there's cash savings, and you're also not having to pay that ridiculous $200 fee. So that's a win. And not only do we not have to pay that $200 fee, so we're saving money, but again, the time saving is there. So becoming an owner of a suppressor is going to be much, much faster. Assuming that you don't have anything on your background check that raises a flag, you just have that time there at the dealer to pass the check, fill out the paperwork, and bounce, right? That's kind of a nice thing. And I don't know if this is the way it's going to end up working for sure, but I know in my state, if I have a valid concealed weapons permit, and I know many other states are the same way, I've already passed my background check because I have a valid concealed carry permit. So that means I fill out the paperwork, I buy the suppressor, and boom, I'm out shooting with a quieter firearm. To me, that is a huge benefit. When it comes to the Short Act, and we get short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns out of the NFA, the benefit there is, there's a sporting use. It's a lot nicer in competitions to be able to run a shorter rifle. If you've ever shot any kind of competitions, you can understand how that might be as far as swinging left to right. It doesn't really work for sporting clays, by the way, because a short shotgun, it's just not going to be effective for, sport clays or even hunting. It's not going to be very effective that way. But a big benefit would be for home defense. I mentioned that earlier. Being able to maneuver with a shorter barrel length, whether it be a shotgun or a short-barreled rifle, it is way easier to maneuver in confined spaces, i.e. a home defensive situation. That's a big benefit. And with both suppressors and some of these other NFA items, like if the Short Act takes place, it's going to help with manufacturing. It's going to boost up some of our favorite manufacturers because demand is going to skyrocket. Now, I understand the way economics work. If there's a higher demand, then prices are going to go up. I get that. But if manufacturers see this and understand this and get ahead of this curve, there's going to be more stuff available, which in turn, or more manufacturers are going to come to the table. I guess there's the other thing, which will then increase the amount of things to purchase, which should bring prices down. That's yet to be determined. We don't know yet because we haven't lived there in this world yet. Mind you, the ability to purchase this kind of stuff without dealing with the NFA is almost 100 years old. We have this stuff has been controlled since 1934. This is a monumental thing. Another benefit would be compliance with the ATF altogether. If this stuff is taken out of the NFA, both suppressors and stuff in the Short Act, we don't have to worry about dealing with the heavy hand of the ATF. As it sits right now, if you're going to go anywhere with your suppressor, you have to have a copy of your paperwork on hand with you at all times because you don't know when you could get checked. I imagine it's the same with short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns. Along with that, if you're going to travel to a different state, you have to notify law enforcement, which seems ridiculous to me, but they have to know if you're carrying a suppressor or an SBR or an SBS in their state. And think about this. Let's say I live in Idaho and I'm traveling to Texas. I have to notify every sheriff in every county that I'm going to be driving through that I'm going to take this stuff through their county. It can be ridiculous and a compliance nightmare. Another huge benefit with this, and we kind of alluded to this earlier, is having these things taken out of the naughty list, out of the NFA, could be a huge boost for, or at least leaning towards a cultural shift, meaning a view on what other people see or perceive as what happens with SBRs and suppressors, that kind of thing. Right now, obviously, when you watch a movie, it's either military or bad guys have this kind of stuff. Well, the more we get these things into law-abiding citizens, gun owners that are obedient to all the rules, and they're using these responsibly and safely, there could be a cultural shift on how these things are perceived and viewed. That could be in itself a big, big win because it's going to bring more people in to the 2A community, thus boosting up the family and helping to retain these rights further down the line for generations. And really the last big pro I can think of is it is a massive, massive win for the Second Amendment community. We have been fighting, now I don't mean we, like I haven't been in the trenches like some of you may have been, or, representatives and folks in Washington that have been working diligently for many, many years. This is a massive victory. And if we can get these bills to Trump's desk and he signs them, again, this is almost 100 years in the making. 100 years. 1934. Okay, so it's 90. We're 90 years, but close enough to 100 years. Generations. How about that? Generations have not enjoyed this part of a guaranteed right in that long. This is a huge, huge win. And that's why I feel also that it's so important that we get involved, because winning this is amazing. Plus, the liberals, just watching them melt down, that's kind of a win for the 2A community as well. So you can look at that on the backside of that. Now, you can't look at all these positives and not think that there might be some negatives to this. There could be. I'm not going to say there are, but there could be some drastic negative consequences for these things to pass. And the number one thing is, first off, is there's going to be increased scrutiny. So as soon as these things get taken off the NFA, anti-gun groups, anti-gun news organizations, they are going to be laser focused on anything that happens with these items. Anything. Let's say that there's a shooting. Now, we've had one shooting, as far as I understand, one shooting, a mass shooting or whatever you want to call it, where someone used a suppressor, which I don't know the details of that all the way. But if this happens, and let's just say some freakazoid gets a hold of an SBR that he steals a suppressor, and he goes on some kind of a shooting rampage, you know as well as I that these groups, these anti-gun groups, are going to cling to that and make it as big of a deal as possible, which it is bad, right? We don't like mass shootings. I don't like people getting murdered. I don't think you do either. But they're going to go overboard on this if something like this happens. And it's going to be even harder for us to retain the stuff that just took place as far as getting these back into our hands. We talked a little bit a second ago about how the market's going to change as far as, any of these items, suppressors and short-barreled items. There is going to be a negative for a while where it's probably going to be really hard to buy these things because they're going to get soaked up overnight. Like, it's going to happen. So my suggestion on this is go ahead and put a can on layaway. If that's something that you want to do, put a suppressor on layaway now. And maybe by the time this stuff passes, then you don't have to worry about it. And we'll see. I don't know. I don't know the best answer for this, but I do think it's important for us to be aware that supply and demand, basic economics, are going to be really frustrating if you're looking to buy any of these items in the near future. Hopefully. The other thing, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about, is pushback at the state level. There are lots of states already out there that don't allow you to have a suppressor, really don't like the idea of anything semi-automatic. It's getting worse and worse as, time goes on. We see Colorado and their craziness, Washington, Oregon, California. The players. They're all the same, and they all have the same ideas. So when it comes to this, at a federal level, that these states are going to fortify their anti-gun laws to the extreme. That's going to hurt all those gun owners that live in those states. And I know it's easy for us to say, well, just move to a free state. Well, that's kind of unfair. And as we pull back, if we do this, we're losing ground. We're losing representation in those states. So we want those folks to hold the line where they live. And they shouldn't have to deal with these draconian anti-gun laws in their states. It should be obvious that freedom is greater than safety. Think about that for a minute. Freedom is greater than safety. Now, the next downside, and this sucks, but it could be a reality. I don't know if this is going to actually happen, but some ranges, they're run by douchebags. Let's be honest. Let's be straight up. At least the range safety officers are complete a-holes. And we've all been to those ranges, whatever they may be, where the range guy is just an absolute dick. Now, he may not be complaining about the suppressor on your firearm, but he might have something to say about the short-barreled shotgun or short-barreled rifle that you're using. I can't tell you what the rules are, the SOPs are in every range in the United States, but I do know that there are ranges that are extremely outdated, and they need to refine their policies. But that's not up to me to decide. That's up to the range or their board to decide. So there could be some scrutiny, or not some scrutiny, but there could be some resistance in some ranges across the United States when this bill passes. Well, I guess we'll see. Here's the other thing we may not understand, and maybe some of us have thought about this before. The ATF could still, depending on what power they're given, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more in a minute, the ATF could still do something with their rule-making authoritative powers, right? We don't like how the ATF interprets things and changes rules and then enforces them by law. Even though they don't have the ability to make laws, they have the ability to enforce rules whatever way they perceive, right? We don't know how this could influence how they want to make rules and enforce rules. That doesn't take away the teeth as small as they might have or big as they might have, I guess. It just changes how they make these rules and enforce them. So there could be some problems there that we're not really digging into yet. Again, we're going to talk about the ATF here in a minute, which scares me. So this one really, this could be a reality with the ATF changing and enforcing rules in a way that we're not really looking at yet. And we already alluded to this last one, but the anti-gun groups are going to go absolutely crazy with this. They're going to go nuts, and they're going to go full Karen, right? They're going to just protest as much as possible. Obviously, they're going to be in Washington making as much noise as they absolutely can. So we need to understand, and we need to make a plan on how we're going to combat that in a way that's a win for the firearms community. We need to at least recognize that they're going to be doing this stuff, which we already pretty well know that's going to happen. But now might be a really good time to contact your local gun rights groups, whatever ones are in your state, and develop a plan on how you can safely and peacefully demonstrate about pro 2A things. This might be an opportunity that we're not looking at, but there will be a massive amount of anti-gun rhetoric from every local and national anti-gun group. We already know that's going to happen. Even these ridiculous senators and some of these debates that have been going on, or representatives, I guess, they've been absolutely ridiculous, preposterous, completely lying about what a suppressor is. Like, it's ridiculous, and we know that they're happy to carry on that rhetoric outside of the halls of Congress. So just be ready for that. Another downside that I don't know a lot of people have talked about is on the local dealer side, the FFL side. There could be a transition period that we haven't even thought about yet, and maybe the federal government hasn't even thought about yet. How, your 07 license might need not to be an 07 anymore. So how do they make these changes happen? Is there going to be changes to the 4473, which the ATF has alluded to, that they're going to make some changes to the Form 4473? There could be a cost associated with this, whether it be at the shop level or the federal level, that we're not seeing or understanding yet. And ultimately, those costs always come down to the taxpayer, whether it be on the consumption side or just the taxing side. We don't know quite yet how that's going to be, but it's very possible that this transition could cost some serious money, and we just need to be ready for that as well. The other, and this is the last real negative, and this is something that we really need to listen to, so I hope you listen to me as I share this. Even though these bills are fantastic and they're great and they do a lot of stuff, there's a segment in the firearms community that doesn't think that this is drastic enough. And maybe I'm one of those. I don't know. Nonetheless, this could seriously, in reality, listen to me here, this could cause a rift in the firearm community. Now, I know you might think, Steve, that makes no sense because we're removing things out of the grasp of the government. I agree. But why can't we go further, right? There's other things that we can do to make firearms ownership easier, safer, and more efficient for law-abiding citizens. Now, this argument hasn't really happened yet, but it could. It could happen. And we need to understand that and get ahead of it as a firearms community, as a firearms family, so we're not causing issues among ourselves. We are really, really good at fighting amongst ourselves. Better than the anti-gunners attack us. We attack ourselves way better than any of these anti-gun groups. We need to stop that. And we need not to let these bills, if they could, I don't know, they may not, but if they could cause some kind of a rift, we need to work together and not argue about stuff that we already have one enemy. We don't need more than that. So I guess that's where I'm going with that. It really is a mixed bag. Well, again, we don't know what's going to go on. We have to stay engaged. We have to stay involved, but it's a wicked crazy ride, and we just got to hang on and maybe enjoy it, maybe fear it. I don't know. You tell me what you think. Are these going to be a good thing? Are these bills going to be a mediocre thing? Do they not go far enough? You tell me. Put that down in the comment. Let's have a conversation about this. I think it's important. Let's take a break real quick, and when we come back, I want to talk about something that is a bit concerning to me, and you need to know about it. What's happening? It's Steve with the Range Minded Podcast, and I'm here to share with you a goal that I have for 2025. Now, I've been doing the podcast now since 2018. That's a long time. But it's been kind of a lull as far as people actually subscribing to the show. So I set a goal for this year to hit 1,000 subscribers on each of my YouTube and my Rumble channel. Now, a lot of you people already follow me on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or even TikTok. But very few of you guys actually follow me on where you can watch the show. So do me a favor. As soon as this video is over, jump over to the YouTube channel, jump over to the Rumble channel, and hit subscribe. That would mean the world to me. It may not be much to you, but it is a lot to me. Help me achieve my goal of 1,000 subs this year, and all your wildest dreams will come true. There might be some kind of a disclaimer after that, but you get the point. Anyways, thanks, guys. Take somebody shooting, and as always, stay range-minded. See ya. All right, let's talk about something that is deeply, deeply concerning to me and to some other folks. Now, recently, well, it's been a few days ago, I saw a post on X that is rather concerning. And I think you guys, if you haven't heard about this, you need to hear about this. And we need to be talking to the right people in Washington about this. So let me jump over on this screen. Hold on, let me flip it over here. Takes me a second. So this was this was part of GOA's. You can see up here GOA's post that they had regarding the ATF and a merger with the DEA. This is highly concerning. And this should be concerning to every one of you who are legal, law-abiding gun owners. Now, back originally, we'd heard that, well, the ATF is just going to dissolve altogether. There's going to be huge budget cuts, which already took place. Not enough. Let's cut it more. Let's just disband it altogether. Now, instead of Trump and those in power, like doing what we want them to do, they came up with this proposal. So they want to bleed the ATF and put it into the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. Here's the downside, and you can see on this post that the GOA put up. It's going to increase the ATF's budget three times over, 300%. Okay? We don't want the ATF. We want the ATF gone. We don't want to fund it exponentially. The other thing is it's going to have 4 times the enforcement agents than what the ATF originally has. Now think about this. We're merging with the DEA. Think about what the DEA does. They have very skilled tactical teams that go all over the place. And now we're morphing them into the ATF to be door kickers as well. That should be concerning. The next thing is it increases the ATF agents, the employees, 10,000 by 10,000. We're adding 10,000 employees for that will do the task of the ATF. That's scary. Also, it reduces the accountability because what the DEA has been doing, it drops the accountability and the oversight of the agency. This will be one big super agency that does a lot of things, and that should be kind of scary to you guys if you haven't heard this yet. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no real bills proposing this or being talked about this for really happening. This isn't a new idea. This has been around before. This is just being recycled again. But it's concerning. This is a big deal. I don't know how supportive Trump is on this. I'm going to have to do a little bit deeper dive. But putting the two agencies together, we just talked about what it adds to each agency, and reducing the oversight, but increasing the budget, that could be devastating, right? That could be a huge deal. Let's talk about what the ATF does right now. So the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, it's not really in the acronym, but anytime there's a major crime involving a firearm or a gun crime, any kind of crime involving a firearm, the ATF gets involved. It'll be a local field office in whatever state this has happened. They'll do the investigation, right? Now, if it's a bigger case, then it might not be a field office, but it might be a regional office that gets involved. They really deal with, like their name's sake, alcohol. So the sale and transfer of alcohol, whether it be illegal, think of moonshiners, right? The ATF's in charge of that. Tobacco, same thing. Cigars that come across the out of Cuba or whatever, that's their deal, or come across the border in Mexico. They're in charge of taking care of that. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, right? We already know what they're dealing with guns. We see what they do with the firearms thing. And then explosives. So they regulate any kind of destructive device that's legally changes hands, or any kind of crime using explosives. They're getting involved in this investigation. Now, not only do they use the local field offices, but the FBI gets involved, and the local sheriffs or other local law enforcement get involved in this whole investigation. They do a lot. I get that. But there's a lot of things, and we talked about this in the previous episode. There's a lot of things that the ATF could do or could be replaced with. Let's have a better way to put it. They could be replaced with a lot of these local agencies, and the ATF could just be dissolved. But when we talk about the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, these guys are a little bit more hardcore. Think of, what was that? I can't remember the name of the movie now, where they go down to Mexico, they find the tunnels, right? Sicario, right? These are DEA guys, right? They're doing a lot of stuff over the borders, like they're the big kids in the block. They have a lot more freedom to do things. Now, when you combine that with the ATF, this doesn't scoop up just the drugs anymore. This now involves anything with firearms. So any small crime or perceived crime, the DEA will get involved, and they have a tendency to be pretty aggressive. I know when we think of ATF, we also look at Ruby Ridge and Waco and Melanowski, right? They don't have a very good track record with being polite. But when we mix it with another agency, that could potentially ramp up dynamic entries, I guess that's a way I could put it, into people's lives that could be really not good at all. And this should be concerning to every one of us. We want the ATF dissolved. We want it abolished. We don't want it to grow into this giant, super door-kicking agency that has little oversight and a big budget. That's not a good way to go. Now, mind you, there could be some benefits to this. I know, I still don't think it's a benefit, but perceived benefits. It could streamline how the ATF investigates and executes their rules, right? There could be a streamlining process there. But again, the downside is, I think, much greater than the positives with this whole thing, is it just creates this giant bureaucracy that has the ability to be violent. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And it scares me a lot. I think you should keep an eye on whatever's happening with this merger. If it happens, I'm going to keep a close eye on it as well. I think it's important that we make our voices heard on this as well. This should not happen. This is dangerous, and it could lead to things that are really unpleasant for the firearms community or the Second Amendment altogether. We live in a friendly regime right now. Just think of the amount of power wielded when it's somebody that's anti-gun, anti-freedom, that ignores the Constitution altogether. It's dangerous, and it's not something that we should even be toying with. And if President Trump has any kind of wisdom on this, I hope he just kicks it out right away. But I have my doubts. We've covered a lot. We've kind of touched on some big topics, whether it be the Hearing Protection Act or the Short Act or this merger with the ATF. I can't stress this enough. Be involved with those who represent you and make your voices heard. That's the biggest tool you have in your quiver. I guess arrow you have in your quiver. You get what I'm trying to say. Stay involved. Be involved. Though the HPA has a pretty good chance of making it through the Senate, the Short Act, maybe not so much, but we'll keep an eye on it. We can have our, keep the faith, I guess, is the best way to put it. Don't give up on either of these bills. They have a pretty good chance of changing gun ownership for a very long time. Let's hope and pray that happens. And with this whole ATF-DEA merger, this could be a double-edged sword. I lean on the side of it not being a good idea, but I could be wrong. Maybe there's something that they see in Washington that could be better for the citizens. But let's be right honest, Washington doesn't do anything that really helps us. They just continue to pass laws and make more restrictions for us. We want to be free, and at least I want to be free. Maybe you like the way the boot tastes, but I don't. I like to be a free man in a free country. We'll see how this goes. regardless of how things go with these bills and this merger, make sure you're supporting your local gun shops. These are usually mom and pop stores. Maybe they have one or two stores. Maybe it is a franchise, but it's important that you're supporting the shops in your community, whether you're buying ammo or firearms or hopefully suppressors and SBRs. It's important to let your dollar speak there too. I've run gun stores. I've run ranges. I know what it's like to have really slim days and have really good days. We want these shops to continue. We want our freedom to continue. And the only way to make that happen is if we really support them as much as possible. Anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, don't forget to find me on X at RangeMinded. I'm there way too often. And again, like, share, comment, do all that stuff that everybody else that's really cool says at the end and the beginning of their videos. I do have a goal to hit 1,000 subs, whether it be on YouTube or Rumble. Let's make that happen. Help me make it happen. It'd be much appreciated. Also, you can always find me on the website, rangemindedpodcast.com. And while you're there, maybe buy a patch or two. It's always a good time. More patches to come, by the way. More patterns to come. But they come when they come. Shouldn't say it like that. But I hope you got what I'm saying. I'm not going to edit that out. I'm going to leave it in there. You guys be safe. You guys have fun. Take somebody shooting. And please, as always, stay range-minded. See you guys.
You need a shotgun. You need a shotgun, man. It's got a good spread.